Hey, I'm Tommy. Welcome to the boat. There's my brother. Hey, Jason, good to have you here. Timothy, what's happening? Jane Aldrich and Barbara, we got them both. Natalie, good to see you. Ashley, how are you? I am glad that you are spending a little time with us here. The Bible says if we are haters, we are murderers. So spread love. I kind of dig that, Timothy. Well played. Caroline in Canada, good to see you. Kristen Melinda, walking a dog, knitting, modding, and apparently learning a foreign language. All wrapping this up at the same time. Do me a favor, everybody. If you haven't smacked that like button, do it. As Johnny Scoville says, it doesn't take a lot of effort, and it's a bit of a rush if you do it long enough. This one here, folks, is, we got another cult. And this one got busted, and it's going to bring up a lot of questions that I think are worth talking about. No longer walking the dog, doing dishes. All right. It's not quite as impressive. Daniel, good to see you. I'm glad you are here. Good to have you. Brock Bandy, what's happening? Hope life is good. So the federal government has handed down some indictments on a place called the Kingdom of God Global Church. That would be the Kingdom of God Global Church. It was formerly known as Joshua Media Ministries International. If that one sounds familiar, that would be JMMI. If that sounds familiar, it's because you probably follow true crime. About a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, this cat had to go and do a whole lot of depositions, and he sat in interrogation rooms. Hey, Kellyanne. And these interviews were fascinating because the guy copped to an awful lot of stuff sitting in there, like his wardrobe budget, like the fact that he needed a house in Florida that you probably saw on the thumbnail. That's in a very affluent part of Tampa, and it is 28,000 square feet.
Or a village.
Yeah, wrap your dome around that for a second. 28,000 square feet. Now, the question has to become, hey, Tommy Bird, the question has to become, I understand that the IRS allows religious organizations to not pay taxes on money that has been donated. And I get that, right? But if they're just profit centers, if these are just churches whose only goal is to make money, I understand if a church is using funds that come in to further the message of their church or to help parishioners, people who are down. And there are churches all over the world that do that, where people go in and say, my life's fallen apart, we're about to get evicted. And the church steps in and helps the people make payments. And they do all kinds of stuff that is an outreach program. That wasn't going on at the Joshua Media Ministries International or its replacement, which is the Kingdom of God Global Church. The reason they had to replace it was they got busted. So all they did was shut down the Joshua Media Ministries International and then reopen under the name Kingdom of God Global Church. And somehow the Internal Revenue Service, in their infinite wisdom, went, yeah, we'll give you tax-exempt status. Don't trip. So here's what the guy did. And the guy's name is David E. Taylor, often known as the Apostle, or in his own words, the best friend of Jesus. I'm not making this up. He claims to have raised people from the dead. He claims to have cured literally thousands and thousands of people from cancer. But here's the business model, folks. And you can tell me, please, in the comment section, feel free, once this starts sounding a little familiar. If you feel like you have heard this in the past, maybe throw a 3 up there. Wes Lightburn, good to see you. If this sounds familiar, toss up a 3 and we'll all get a laugh out of it. But this is what they did. They coerced workers to work at call centers. Now, these workers worked for nothing. They weren't paid. What they did was they cold called people and said, we would like to pray with you. We also do dream interpretation. But I was reading through text messages from the guy that runs this place, David E. Taylor, to his unpaid workers, the armor bearers, he called them. They're slaves, slave labor. And how's that? People are already seeing the similarities between this and maybe another cult. I wouldn't say it out loud because they'd probably sue me. Oh, to hell with it. It sounds a lot like Scientology, doesn't it? Except these people don't make you sign up for 1 billion years. Apparently with this one, you can just sort of dip your toe in and out. You don't have to do it for all of those lifetimes afterwards. But there were text messages where he was going off on employees. One in particular that jumped off the page at me was one of his closers. So this must be a 2-part sale, which is pretty common in boiler rooms. The first person just makes sure that the person you're talking to is able to give money. if they don't have credit cards, if they don't have any kind of wealth, then talking to them for 40 minutes or praying with them is a waste of time in the eyes of this type of organization. But they had call centers all over the United States for unpaid employees. And one of the text messages said to one of the closers, "You have brought in $6,000 in the last 5 hours. That is unacceptable." Imagine that. $6,000 in 5 hours. Boy, you got a room of a bunch of people. Well, they had set a goal in the room of $164,000 for the day. Let me let that one sink in. One call center wanted to do $164,000 in a day. And they were told if they did not, then there would be no food. The food would be turned off, you see. Doesn't mean they'll literally starve them, but they would put them on anywhere from a 30 to a 90-day, allegedly, diet of nothing but peanut butter and jelly. And this may sound absolutely insane, but I have done that. Louis Sharp, they claimed in the news report, according to the Department of Justice, it was 27,000 square feet, 10 bedrooms, 10 baths. But the list of things that this person bought, including entire packages of toys that he would buy in one location and then buy the exact same package of toys in another location, like all-terrain vehicles, trucks that could pull multiple jet skis or wave runners. All of this money, right? All of this money basically just funded the lifestyle of what looks like two people, David E. Taylor, the apostle, and Michelle Brannon. That's the executive director. Both of them are now incarcerated. One, the woman involved, let's see if we can get a picture of these people up there so you can see what these lovely individuals look like. Nice people, right? Solid. Oh, you know what? Maybe I don't even have it up there. I may not. They are on the thumbnail. Unfortunately, I don't think I got it up. These are individuals who are now waiting for the federal government to prosecute them. And with a 99% conviction rate, there's a lot of evidence here to point to the fact that these people were abusing the hell out of their staff to the point that they're not considered staff. This is considered human trafficking. If you have people working for you and you hold these people to a standard where you can punish them and put them in basically the hole. In this place, it turned out that it was a garage. Once again, can I get a 3? Does this sound familiar? This sounds like the cult of Scientology's playbook, except these people literally seem to do nothing with the money except buy very lavish properties. David Taylor personally, when they raided his house, there were 4 cars or 3 cars sitting in the driveway that had big red bows on them. They were gifts, apparently, to somebody. There was a call center that was going on inside that house. So every day, these people are just cold calling. If you've never cold called someone, I don't think you can imagine what a difficult job this is. But if they're not cranking out more than $6,000 in 5 hours, they're considered failures. Over the course of 9 years of this cat doing this, he built $50 million that they're aware of. That would be 50. $50 million. And by all accounts, it went into his pocket. He had 4 Bentleys, right? Because you need that if you're a servant of God. 4 Bentleys. He had Mercedes-Benz. He had all of his clothes were made by companies like Louis Vuitton, Hugo Boss. And when he was deposed on this, he said, "I have a lifestyle that I have to keep up." He has the keys to the kingdom here on earth. This is literally out of his mouth. This is a guy that raises people from the dead, according to him. This is not a religion. This is a cult. And it's a fine line, right? One person's religion is another person's cult. But when you have people working for you who do not get paid, Scientology, you're running a cult. If you have people who literally sign their life away so that they can generate money for no other reason than to benefit the people at the top of this pyramid, then it's a cult, right? And allegedly, the Church of Scientology donates some of their slave labor to some of the top stars in their religion. And I mean that literally. Tom Cruise apparently gets an awful lot of free labor from people who are volunteers, for lack of a better term, people that sign contracts, symbolic or otherwise, for 1 billion years to work for the cult of Scientology. And this is a bust that looks so remarkably like the cult of Scientology, in my humble opinion, that if you're running the IRS, you just got to start taking a look at other religious organizations. And as most people know, I do consider myself a fairly religious cat. That said, we got to do something about this tax-exempt status that we bestow on any single church. You remember the Reverend Bud Green?
I do remember the Reverend Bud Green.
Okay, way back in the day before marijuana became legalized. Louis Sharp, good to see you. The average Bentley cost $200,000 to $300,000 a piece. That's right, Louis Sharp. Now, in defense of David Taylor, he did not buy any of these outright. He would put down $100,000 or he would put down $60,000 and then allow the church to continue to make the payments on all of these things. The property that they busted him in, he had apparently paid about $8 million and change for, and then of course decorated it lavishly. Of the $50 million that was coming in, I don't believe that any of that cash ended up doing anything for anybody other than David Taylor and his director, his executive director, Michelle Brannon. Now, these cats are facing 60 years apiece. And the big crime in this is human trafficking. If you tell your employees that if they don't meet quotas that they're not going to get fed, this apparently rises to the level of human trafficking. Hello? You remember hearing about the hole in Scientology? How employees were tossed into that place and locked up? Does that sound like a different scenario? Because to me, it sounds exactly the same. The difference is that one has only been in business for 9 years and has managed to come up with $50 million, while the other allegedly has billions. Now, the people that are donating this money, I promise you they're getting hard sell. If you got a guy that can do a cold call and while failing, bring in $6,000 in 5 hours, these are some hard telemarketers, man. These are hard telemarketers. And the sad thing is that they play on the emotions of people that truthfully believe that with a name like, what did they change it to? The Kingdom of God Global Church. With a name like that and with locations all over the United States. It started in Detroit, but there was they got a bus that went on in Tampa. There was a church in Houston. All of these churches seem to do one thing and one thing only, and that is drive money into the pockets of the two people at the top. At what point are we going to, you know what? This is a pretty astute comment, unfortunately. He says Scientology, unfortunately, has too powerful of players involved to go down. I think it's more than that. Most cults don't have a program in place to try to destroy your enemies by lying about them sexually, lying about them in terms of drugs or any other vice. But that's written right into the belief system of the cult of Scientology. This is not something that David Taylor did. David Taylor seemed to just believe that he was going to be able to do this until the end of time because for the love of God, he's the apostle. This guy's best friends with Jesus. He has raised people from the dead. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. But if you're listening to anybody online that told you that they recently raised the dead, I don't know that you should donate to them. Just a humble opinion, right? But I don't think that that's something that you ought to be putting cash into. Unfortunately, these people have unbelievable skill when it comes to running a phone room. This is not an accident that they spun out one room after another. And allegedly, the vast majority of all money that came from call centers. Renee B., good to see you. This isn't people showing up on Sunday and dropping a few $100s in the collection plate. I watched videos of David Taylor doing trainings of sorts where he is saying to people, if you can get 10 grand, then go for 10 grand. But if you can get 60, okay, as a person that has been in and run and worked at and had a lot to do with these kinds of boiler rooms or call centers or whatever you want to call them, there are always, when I would say things, and you probably heard me discuss this a lot on the channel, where I would say I wasn't breaking the law. I may have been doing some really unethical stuff, but I wasn't breaking the law. And what I mean by that is we had a list of rules on the wall. If you're selling something from the front of the room as a public speaker and it's related to business opportunity, the threshold is $495. You can't go above that. So you're never going to be selling the package for more than that. If you did, you're breaking the law. Now, once that becomes a lead, because that's all that is a lead generator, when the back end sales guys call them, they're not going to put a package together of more than 10 grand. Now, most rooms that stay in business don't write $10,000 packages. Even if the person's got 600 grand in available credit, You want to come in at 9,000 or 8,500 so that it looks like you tailored a package. You don't want every package to be the same price. And I know this sounds sleazy, but it is how you stay in business. It may be unethical, but you're following a set of rules. And if somebody asks you a question from the front of the room and they say, what percentage of people that buy this are successful? If you go, oh, most of them, you're going to end up in prison. If you say, well, 99% are going to fall flat on their face and fail. Now, as a good speaker, you can make it sound like, look, man, you should be in the 1%. They're going to lay out a roadmap. If you don't follow it, that's on you. It's not on the company. They literally put it out step by step by step. This is the pitch. They don't do any of that. They hire 5, coaches and pay them $20 an hour, and it's a scam. It's a more organized form of network marketing where the only people that get paid is the absolute top of the pyramid, so to speak. Lewis Sharp says anything under 10 grand goes under the IRS radar. More importantly, for the people running scams, to get credit card companies to come in and really lose their mind. If you're a customer of Visa and you feel like you got ripped off, there are thresholds that Visa will come in really hard on. And if you can sort of stay below those thresholds, then you're probably not in bad shape. But where you really run into problems is when people are willingly donating cash. Now, I don't know how willing it is. I'd love to see the script. I really would. But they do start off with this concept of, hey, man, I'm so-and-so and I'm with a church. We would like to reach out to you because we believe that you might need someone praying for you, right? And those of us at the Kingdom of God Global Church would like to pray with you right now. Is there anything on your heart that you really feel like God needs to pray for you for, or you need to pray to God for? And by the time that conversation's over, they will convince you that David Taylor has a fast track talking to the man. And with most of these scam churches, and they're starting to drop, they're starting to get knocked over. And the funny thing is this, they're not starting to get knocked over because of the fact that you have these individuals within government or within the Internal Revenue Service investigative divisions or any such crap. You have private citizens, people online, people that have their own podcasts who are going after these places, finding out what the business practices are, and then handing it over to the Internal Revenue Service with a big ass red bow on it. It's kind of like watching the predator hunters who go out and do the work of the cops. Then the cops show up at the end. They hand them all the transcripts. They got a video of the guy confessing. Right now, there's no reading of rights. There's none of any of that stuff because they're talking to a private citizen. But there are groups out there now. One of them, I believe, is called Trinity, and they're hunting down these scam artists. This is a win. It's a win because $50 million has been bilked out of people. And statistically speaking, and this is a terrible thing, but it's the truth, they're not targeting the wealthy. You understand? At all. They are targeting people and working desperation. That's tough, in my opinion. Susie Q, good to see you. That's a really difficult thing for me to accept because these are people who think I'm not going to be able to make the mortgage. I literally am that low on money. And now you got a professional pitch man on the phone saying, you know why you're not making your mortgage? Because you're not giving to God. You give to God, he rewards you. You get more money. Man, look at David, right? He's living in a house that looks a lot like the Astrodome because of how good he's been to God, right? It's a terrible pitch. I'm going through a rough patch. Johnny, Tommy, Reese, and the people in these chats are uplifting me. Well, I'm happy to hear that. I really am. That's a fantastic thing. It's a fantastic thing. And I'm glad to hear that you're getting it from a circle of individuals. That's healthy as hell. It really is. Workers were reportedly forced to apply for EBT cards, claim homelessness, and relinquish their benefits back to the church leadership. Nothing like paying somebody nothing, then forcing them to get food stamps and government assistance and keep those checks. This is slave labor. And it doesn't sound a lot different than that other ugly cult. To me, it doesn't. But one has demonstrated over a lifetime of being a church, and I throw out the church, right, that they will go after the Internal Revenue Service. They will get people to get jobs at the Internal Revenue Service. They will go through the trash of employees at the Internal Revenue Service or the Department of Justice, and they will get enough dirt on someone. If you've never had somebody make a video about you where they say that you stomp puppies out for fun or anything like that, watching those things happen to most people will make them crawl into a corner and pull a sheet over their heads. And unfortunately, the cult of Scientology did that beautifully to the United States of America. Believe that. And they got caught for it, right? As it turns out, L. Ron Hubbard didn't have to go away, but his wife did. The hero, isn't he? Way to soldier up, you badass. Your freaking baked beans teeth. Based on federal indictments on this, it's like a 10-count indictment. But the big one is going to, there's money laundering involved. There's the hiding of assets. Hope Between the Dreams, good to see you. There's all kinds of stuff that's baked into this indictment. But the big one's going to be human trafficking. And I believe, call me crazy, but I believe that if they get traction with this, then you're going to have to start looking at other churches that pay people $40 a week, allegedly. No one actually gets that $40. But you offer these employees $40 or $50 a week. I've said this on my show. I cannot tell you how many times, but I ran phone rooms and guys would come in and say, I'm trying to get a job. You know, what's the commission structure? If a guy comes in and says, what's the hourly wage, right? He's probably not someone that's going to do well in the room. But if a guy comes in and says, tell me about your commission structure. How do I max it out? Do you have a bonus plan, a Top Gun plan where the people that do the most money get a share of the income or blah, blah, blah. The best I ever hired without fail across the board were people that used to work for the cult of Scientology trying to sell people more religious packages. And the stories that these guys would tell, like you'd sit around at the end of the day, mostly, you know, getting drunk and doing drugs. And these guys would tell you stories of how they would call people on Christmas Day. They would call people the day that their child was born to start selling them packages for their brand new born kid. It is some of the most ruthless. They don't have to follow laws. If this is a member of the church, you can contact them at 11 o'clock at night and pitch them. Do you understand? Once you have a relationship with this person and they're no longer a person who's just going to be donating, now they're a parishioner. Now you have a relationship. Cold calls can only be made during a certain period of time. Cold calls, you're not allowed to call someone who's on the do not call list. And there's all of these rules that you have to adhere to. But if you do huge email blasts where you say, hey, our church just wants to pray for you. All we want is to be able to pray for you. It's a very easy way, right? It's a very easy way to build a relationship. When we worked in that industry and we were really, you know, at one point, Johnny and I were working in a room for about 70 guys and gals, and we were the only two closers. So there were times you worked 12 and 13-hour days. And you can't make a phone call after 9 o'clock. So at about 10 to 9, you'd start calling people and going, hey, I really wanted to talk to you. I wanted to be able to tell you about this. I can't. Legally, I can't call anybody after 9 o'clock. It's just not something I can do. And they go, yeah, no, I understand. What, you know, if you happen to call my office, though, right, you can call my office at 10 o'clock at night. That's an inbound call. I can take inbound calls. And there were times you don't leave till 2 o'clock in the morning because you got somebody that's calling you every half an hour and you try to pop them for $8 to $10. 8 to 10 grand on every single one of them, one right after the other. These people are doing that and there's no threshold. If all you can get is $5, get $5, go to the next person. We had a framework that we kind of had to fall in between. This is some of the scummiest stuff that I've ever read. And to say, we're going to put you on 30 to 90 days of peanut butter and jelly, I've done that. No lie. Like I've spent more than 30 days on lockdown eating peanut butter and jelly for 3 meals a day. It's absolutely traumatic. Of all of the stuff that I went through inside, that's one of the most traumatic things. It really is. When you get the same food constantly, we complained so badly about the peanut butter and jelly that they moved to bologna, right? Everybody wanted meat. Within 2 weeks, everyone was begging for the peanut butter and jelly back. We stayed on bologna for about 120 days, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Now at breakfast, they would also bring carrots and celery sticks and 2 milks. But that's what you do to convicts. It's what you do to prisoners. That's what's happening inside these cults. And our government, the United States of America, via the Internal Revenue Service, doesn't just protect these scumbags, but they allow them to run tax-free. So this guy brought in $50 million for this church, allegedly $50 million. I'd be willing to bet it's a hell of a lot more than that. If they can track down 50 million, there's a bunch of it that they can't track down yet. I mean, I promise, right? Because one of the charges is tax evasion. This is non-taxable income, right? How the hell could it be tax evasion? So there's a pile of money out there that we haven't heard about yet. But if we just call it at 50 million and you say, what this is a business. It's a business so that you can drive Bentleys and have, houses the size of most cathedrals or stadiums. If that's the case, that's what? $30 million in taxable income that the government didn't take. I believe, and this is going to sound crazy coming from a Christian, but I believe that all churches should be paying taxes. It would do a lot of really cool things. Churches could now preach anything they want from the pulpit. And if that means that one political party versus another political party seems to be somewhat not Christian or less than whatever your religion happens to be, then you should be able to go into the pulpit and say that all you want. One of the reasons they can't is because as a tax-free entity, you're not allowed to advocate for any kind of a political party one way or another from the pulpit. It's done anyway. I mean, ministers do it, not often. Kenneth Copeland is for real scary. Kenneth Copeland is a guy that allegedly has scammed over $1 billion. I mean, he makes this guy look like a piker. The difference is he is the one out there. He's the face out there demanding money and doing it through a lot of videos and a lot of they'll mail you stuff in the mail. Like if you show any interest at all, they're going to send you a free book. Then they're going to send you a lot of DVDs, and the DVDs, or they probably do them now by download. But it's just another way for them to start asking for money. And in the case of Copeland, he said, we're building this unbelievable city that's going to be for the grace of God and the mission of God. It's never been built, right? All of these people and the folks who were donating were going to have a shot at living in these cities. That's an absolute contract of sorts. The big donors had a shot at, well, if you don't build the city, isn't that fraud? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me that we allow this to go on. And I understand, I really do, because look, even in my religion, you start talking about people walking on water and burning bushes and people raising from the dead. And it starts sounding like, if you're a non-believer, you can go, holy crap, that doesn't sound crazy to you? I get that. All of these run on faith. And I'm not talking about any of the doctrine. You understand? If this guy wants to say he's best friends with Jesus, that's the doctrine of that particular church. I don't necessarily buy it. For him to call himself an apostle, that's the doctrine of that church. And if that's what you want to do, well, run with it. The problem becomes when this is a business, right? No matter how crazy one religion sounds to a person, to the next person, it's faith. But when you start taking money from someone based on faith and buying Lamborghinis with it, or banging everything that moves, I'm sorry, but David Taylor allegedly was sleeping with everything. And he would not allow the female parishioners to talk to one another. This was a doctrine in the church. So this lady can't talk to that lady because he's sleeping with both of them. And he doesn't want it getting back and forth. And he's flying people all over the country so he can bang them. This guy is about the sickest that you're going to come across. And if you listen to him interviewed, if you listen to depositions, if you listen to him do any interviews, this guy's IQ has got to be about 9 points above Forrest Gump's. And that to me is even more distressing because it gives you an idea of just how little on the ball someone has to have in order to start an unbelievable cult. And I think it may have allegedly been Lafayette Ron Hubbard that said, you don't make money at a couple of pennies a word. If you really want to get rich in America today, you got to start a church. I'll never forget Jim and Tammy Faye Baker's Heritage USA amusement park. They sold more timeshares than there were accommodations. Shocker. They were also very instrumental in the birthing of the Copeland. There's a whole lot of incest that is occurring within a lot of these churches that aren't breaking the law necessarily. They're unethical to beat hell. But there are religions, and this is where I think the IRS needs to get their feces together. It's like what I was doing with BizOp. I'm not breaking the law. I'm following the letter of the law perfectly. I'm a scumbag. Everything we're doing is we're creating an ether. that people breathing now feel the need to buy. We're not lying to anybody, right? But just because you can get away with something doesn't mean you should. I view it a lot like auditors, right? I can walk into any restaurant I want in the United States and start filming people in there. It's bad form. I can walk into any library in the United States and just start filming in there. Now, should I go in there and do that to prove that I have those rights? There are people's kids in there. Nobody wants that stuff going on, right? But they're following the letter of the law. And some of these churches are, especially the mega churches that are hitting $1 billion. They're not breaking the law. This person was running a human trafficking ring. In my humble opinion, you can call me stupid, but if you have employees who don't get paid, I think that's human trafficking. I'm sorry, I do. It's one thing if you're a volunteer, but let's look at the cult of Scientology as an example. Every time you hear about somebody that gets out of the Sea Org, they escape the Sea Org. Nobody walks in and goes, hey, I've decided I'm out of here, grabs their stuff and walks out the front door. Allegedly, that's just not how it goes down, right? You got to get burner phones. You got to start calling relatives who are going to meet you in another city, and you're going to end up driving out of the parking lot in the trunk of someone's automobile. To me, that sounds like human trafficking. And it doesn't seem like it's getting a whole lot of people investigating it. Dane Young says, David Miscavige's wife is just missing. Well, it depends on who you talk to, right? Allegedly, she might be in this place in California where she's completely cool being, by the way. But you talk to all of those employees who were in the hole, right? And if this is something that you believe, if you believe the doctrine that much, you don't feel like you're being trafficked. You feel like you're working for the church, that you're trying to further the goals and the aims of the church. And the sad thing is that my friend calls mega churches Six Flags over Jesus. That's actually really funny. Many fraudsters hide behind religion. Well, the ones that are really getting rich seem to be, right? And why not? You know, they say that there's only two things that are absolutely guaranteed in life, right? Death and taxes. Unless you're David Taylor, right? David E. Taylor says the only things that you got to worry about in life have nothing to do with taxes. I mean, this guy didn't hide this much. Nothing. 2 Bentleys, 3 Bentleys, had a Continental, had a Mulsanne, like had to have the 4-door, had to have the 2-door. And then he had a bunch of runaround Mercedes and he had a Galanda wagon. There's a list of exorbitant crap that he bought for this church. And I was going to take a picture of it and put it up. It's this friggin' long. It would take me 25 minutes to read. You just wouldn't believe the stuff that this guy bought, including $15,000 worth of crab legs. Apparently he's into crab legs, but he dropped 15 grand. You know what kind of party that is? I'm guessing it wasn't for parishioners, right? I doubt that's how it went down. But to run a call center out of your mansion does sound a lot like human trafficking. Like these people don't have the ability to leave unless, of course, your numbers are bad enough, at which point they will drop you off at a homeless shelter for a week. It was one of the punishments for the people working in the phone rooms. Now, keep in mind, this isn't going to be a whole lot different than what you hear Reese or any of the other ex-Scientologists talk about. Once you sort of get excommunicated, once you get kind of kicked out, you lose everybody you know, right? Now, you're out on the street. You got no one to call. Guaranteed you don't have a phone, right? They're not sending you out with anything. So they dump you at a homeless shelter. And if you've never been in a homeless shelter, it probably feels a lot like prison. I would imagine it's very, very scary. So that if they come back a week later and go, hey, you want to come back here and see if you can do better than $6,000 in 5 hours? Everything is designed to make the slave labor more productive. Everything there is designed. By the way, physical abuse, they say, is a constant. You might get smacked around for not doing your job. Put a 3 in the chat if that also sounds familiar, right? We heard all kinds of things from all kinds of people that have been in the Sea Org and some of the other organizations. Mike Rinder used to talk about it routinely. That little sawed-off prick David Miscavige at 4'11" would come in and start smacking people in the face because he knows nobody can possibly touch the chairman of the board. Tougher than hell. Hella hard. Love to see somebody beat the piss out of that dude. But that's really where we're at. I really dislike that people think others are idiots to get involved in these groups. They just desire true connection and have been misguided. That's a great comment, and I'll tell you why. The best way to describe it, in my opinion, is the old, how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat it one bite at a time. When people sign up for cults, you don't walk in the front door and they go, here's what we're going to do. You're not going to be allowed to talk to your family ever again. Everybody you know is going to be from the church. We're going to get you to work for us without paying you. And then we're going to cut you off from everybody so that you're terrified to leave. That's not the pitch. You understand? They bring you in, and very often people who are seeking out God in whatever form they're seeking him out, or help, or religion, or self-help, because the Nexium cults, to me, all of the self-help cults are just a spin-off version of Scientology. All of the other cults that came out, a lot of them have roots in that mindset, in that kind of, hey, this is just about making you a better person. And those early courses do exactly that. If you take the communication course that Scientology teaches, you're going to communicate better. This shouldn't be a shocker. How many people, raise your hand if you took a communication course? Not seeing a lot of hands. If you take the time to take a communication course, even if it's taught by idiots, you're going to end up communicating better. Why? Because if you take a course on playing the guitar, you're probably going to go home and play on a 6-string. If you take a course in communication, you're actually going to apply the things that you're learning to communicating with people. And the people around you go, wow, dude, you seem to be different. Now you have validation to what you just paid your $300 for or whatever. Now, phase 2, love bombing. All of the people from the church just start reaching out to you. Damn, you're the best. Honestly, I can't believe how many people have said, you are just amazing at this. Right? You were born to be a Scientologist. You were born to be insert your favorite cult here. Tommy, have you ever been a Scientologist, and what type of person do they attract? They attract all kinds of people. I have never been a Scientologist. I was a scam artist, and we tended to run in the same circles. Not being disrespectful to the cult, but the number of people that I worked with in hustle industries, like the business opportunity industry, multi-level marketing industry, those industries tend to be thick with Scientologists. Why? Because if you could call a guy the day that his daughter was born and tell him that he needs to give you $8,000 today, and you don't let him off the phone until he buys the courses, you're a closer. You're a stone cold killer. And at some point along the way, these guys go, "Chew, you got any idea what I could be making in the real world?" And then people like Grant Cardone and these people that kind of rise to the top of the scammer levels, no offense, Grant, but these guys had businesses in place to make it more difficult for credit card companies to pay back when people got angry. The normal hustle is to make sure that the coach talks to this person for the first 90 days, spends a lot of time to giving them assignments, making them run around, because that first 90 days is key. If you get past that 90 days, good luck trying to cancel. The cult of Scientology took it to a whole different level, and they came out with this arbitration BS. Oh, so you're a member of the church now. And as part of the doctrine of the church, you can't sue the church. So if you have a problem, we sit down and we go through the church's arbitration process. It's a hell of a scam, in my humble opinion. It's a hell of a scam. It's, Kellyanne says, you're lucky to not know all of the evils of Scientology. Here's the biggest evil, in my opinion. So Scientology is basically a Ponzi scheme. Well, here's what Scientology is. It's not a Ponzi scheme necessarily, because no one's making any money. The real definition of a Ponzi scheme is that the greatest example, if you just want it to make sense, is you think of Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff didn't set out to rip anybody off. He set out to take a bunch of people's money and actually invest it for them the way any hedge fund guy does, or any of the big institutional investors. So you have a 401k plan and you're in the Fidelity group. You're letting somebody invest your money for you, and everybody else is. So you've got the ability to really leverage. And anyway, Madoff started to mess around in investments that lost him a ton of money. The first year he was in business, he made a bunch, and all of the people that invested made a bunch. And they told everybody, man, I made 15% of my money last year. You know, banks are giving you 3% or 2.5% at that point. So all of these rich people started flooding in with more money. The next year he tried to do the same thing and lost his backside. But he had all this money coming in. So anytime someone said, hey, can you pay me? I took the last guy through the door. Johnny Scoville comes in and invests, and I take his money to pay the B lady the money that she wants. You understand? If you're using someone else's money, allegedly, as the payoff to the original investors, that's a Ponzi scheme. If the product is money. The problem with this as a concept is the last guy through the door, Kevin Bacon, gets absolutely screwed. There were a lot of really wealthy individuals, Kevin Bacon being one of them, that lost an absolute fortune with Bernie Madoff because they got to the party late. Even when he was losing money, if you said, hey, I want out of this, he's going to pay you your 15% to keep the scam going. And then he got to a point where he realized it was too late. And that then, what happens is what always happens. Now he's throwing unbelievable parties for his kids. His daughter had a 16th birthday party that allegedly cost about $5 million. His watch collection was worth millions and millions of dollars. Ever wonder how politicians are millionaires and how they made that money? No, I don't wonder at all. I don't wonder at all. Politicians are allowed to invest in stocks that they know exactly what's going to happen in the outcome. If you've been on the channel a long time, this is the example I use every time because it's a very good example. But let's say you're on the National Transportation and Safety Board. How in the name of God could you use that as a leverage to make money? It seems innocuous. Your job is to find out whether plane crashes were terrorism or whether it was the fault of the airlines or the fault of the company that does the maintenance on the airlines or whatever the case may be. So let's say a Delta plane crashes. Now the National Transportation and Safety Board is going to put that jet back together. In the meantime, the stock for the company that works on that jet, the stock for Boeing, who made that jet, and the stock for Delta are all hanging in the balance to wait to see what the National Transportation Safety Board rules. If they rule that it's Delta's fault, their stock's going into crap, and the other two, their stock's going to go up because they just got exonerated. If you know what the ruling is going to be 3 weeks ahead of time, in the stock market, you can go long or you can go short. And what that basically means is you can bet against the company and short their stock. You're betting it's going to go down. Or you can go and bet that a stock is going to go up. So you find out that Delta's not at fault, that the company that worked on the engines were, right? Scoville's engine repair. So you short Scoville, you go long on Delta, right? And long on Boeing. And now in one fell swoop, in one piece of insider info, you're done. Never have to worry about it again. The crazy thing is you have hundreds of friends who are also on different committees. And now your guy from Ways and Means calls you up and goes, hey, Tommy, what's happening on that national transportation thing? Is that Delta's fault? Hey, why don't we do this at lunch? I don't think we should talk about this on a telephone. And then I go and tell him that, and he goes, I got a good one for you. Turns out we're going to give a huge break to Visa. We're going to let them write off 100% of bad debt for the next 3 years to recover from what happened during the COVID-19 crisis. We're not announcing it for 3 weeks. Well, that'd be a hell of a time to invest in Visa, wouldn't it? Insider trading is legal if you're in the government. Get that? Insider trading is legal if you are in the government. You can take that information and you can buy stocks based on it. You're not supposed to, but everybody does. Nancy Pelosi is the example I use, and not just because I hate Nancy Pelosi or Democrats, but because she's really a shining example of it. The thing that makes her so egregious is her husband works in that industry. He picks winners and losers for a living. And she's telling him, hey, you might want to go long on Delta, right? You might want to short that Scoville engine repair company too. There's something seriously wrong with that. Yeah, it's terrifying to me. Pelosi just did it last year when her husband invested in Nevada or NVIDIA before a giant contract was announced with Taiwan. Go figure. Here's the crazy thing. They're not breaking the law. Do you blame them? Why do you think people get to Washington, D.C. and decide to stay in Washington as a politician for 35 years? They don't feel like they did enough? No, they've got the greatest gig on planet Earth. They fly all over the world. Like, the guy from Arkansas, right? The senator from Arkansas is flying to China to talk to them about things. It's like, you want to go somewhere, just get the American people to pay for it. Plain and simple. You fly all over the place. You have servants, right? They all volunteer for it. But these are staffers and people that want to get into politics. So they volunteer for this governor's office or this senator's office or this representative or whatever. So you've got an entire staff of people that do all the legwork, that run everything down for you. And your job is simply to write bills. But you don't do that either, because you've got people that show up and say, we want this bill to go through. I'm a lobbyist, right? My job is to make sure that nobody can sue Philip Morris. And we want a new bill saying that you're going to restrict how much money somebody can get paid out for suing a tobacco company. And you say, well, you know what? That's not going to be really popular with my constituencies. I don't know that I want to put my name on that. How about if we paid you? Well, that's not legal. right? As a citizen, you can't donate more than $2,000 to anybody's campaign, $2,300 or $2,400 or something like that. So when you hear people say he donated $50 million to Joe Biden's campaign, no, he didn't. He could donate $50 million to a political action committee, right? This is how they get around the laws. If you can't donate $50 million because you don't want anybody buying a politician, well, then we just start a company called the Political Action Committee. We call it the Committee to Re-elect Joe Biden. Now you can give me $100 million. No big deal, right? Yeah, Citizens United. Anybody follow that? Do you feel peace now? If so, that's amazing. Do I feel peace? I don't know. Some days I absolutely feel peace. There are days that I don't. If you're asking that question because I had a rough year last year, I'm at complete peace as far as that goes. I really am. And you know what? I said we would have uncomfortable conversations. I'll have an uncomfortable conversation. I'm at complete peace with that because I know exactly what happened. I do. And I'm not feeling a lot of guilt. I'm sorry, but I'm not. And the parties involved, not all of them, but for the most part, the parties involved all get along beautifully. I'll be honest, I'm super impressed with the things that Quibbs is doing these days. I really am. I love the direction that she seems to be taking her life. And that in and of itself brings me peace. And you buy 3 houses and claim all of them are your primary residence on your mortgage app. Sweet. Yeah. I mean, look, there's a million hustles. There literally is a million ways to get around all of this. The only place that I'm not at peace is because there's a lot of people that said a lot of really foul things to me. There's a lot of really hateful individuals out there. And I'm not talking about the people that we all know hate me. I'm talking about the ones that loved me on a Monday and hated me on a Tuesday and never gave me one opportunity to speak to them about it. That to me, I find really distressing. They are all play Diddy politics. What I got on you is money and power for me. Oh, you're wondering if living in Ecuador gives me peace more than I've ever felt on planet Earth. And that's the absolute gospel truth. You know, Timothy Glass, it's funny too, because all of these people end up going down the sexual rabbit hole as well. And I think that makes a lot of sense, as sad as that is. Because when you give someone unfettered power and you give somebody the ability to actually start feeling like they are a friend of God, or you have people convinced that you've got a direct line, right, to divinity, then you're going to abuse it at every single level. And that level often takes the shape of sexual immorality and the ability to pressure people into having sex with you. Whether you're the producer at a record label or whether you are the apostle at a cult, one way or the other, whether it's Bad Boy Records or the Kingdom of God Global Church. In both examples, you've got someone who has been elevated to a level that is above human. Wow, Joanne, what a kind thing to say. It really is a kind thing to say. As a country, we need to demand that they disassemble these cults, right? Here's the thing. If you asked 330 million Americans if they thought the Church of Scientology was a cult, what percentage of the country do you think would laugh and say, of course? Everybody that saw South Park, everybody that watched Tom Cruise jump up and down on a couch acting like an absolute bunghole, or the deal that he did with Matt Lauer, where he talked about, the pseudoscience of psychology and everything else. Almost everybody on planet Earth realizes this is a cult. But the government of the United States says, don't pay taxes. Screw these people into the dirt. They have been caught for credit card scamming, allegedly, where the people that were working in the phone room, as opposed to getting them onto EBT, you were showing these people how to run up massive credit card bills to buy more education in the cult. Renee B., you owe me nothing, hon. Love you. What is my take on Waco? Waco was another cult. Did the government handle it right? No. But cults get very scary when they have 50 caliber machine guns and hand grenades. The money that the and I did a show on this a long time ago, but the money that David Koresh and the Branch Davidians brought in, they built an unbelievably large compound with that money. It was also pine. That entire building was made of wood. I think that the government messed up huge in how they handled that. However, when they went to do the raid and a guy blows holes this big through the wall with a 50 cal and shoots a couple of your agents, you're going to get salty. And they spent a lot of time trying to smoke those guys out, so to speak. This is such a hard question, but I'm really glad you asked it. Curious, Tommy, since you are a fan of Russell Brand, and I'm not sure I'm a fan of Russell Brand. I'll answer that in a second. Do you really think that all these women are lying about what he did? What is your take with him faces criminal court in the UK? What I have said is this. I couldn't stand Russell Brand for his entire career. I didn't like any of the movies the guy did. I didn't like any time I ever saw him on a talk show. I didn't see anything that dude did in his life that I didn't find repulsive until he started talking about sobriety. And he is a tremendous voice on sobriety. Absolutely is. But he's done some things that if I could do all over again, I sure as hell would change how I did it. If you say, hey, I was a sex addict for 10 years, you're opening yourself up. And if you say I'm a sex addict for 10 years or 15 years or whatever, and you're worth millions and millions of dollars, you have an excellent chance that people are going to take a run at you. Do I believe these women are lying? I would never say that. I really wouldn't, unless it's a Harvey Weinstein situation where a woman, they say, hey, anything unusual about the guy's testicles? No, none. Well, he didn't have any. If you didn't notice that, right, with the story that a lot of these people told, then that's probably questionable. I'm not saying they're lying. I'm saying it doesn't sound all that real. And then in the same situation, you see 6 years of correspondence where the woman is reaching out to him saying, hey, my mom and I are going to be in town. Can we all go out to eat? Sure. Every victim and everybody who has been through that is going to act differently. But that all stunk. Bottom line, that stunk. So I don't know with Russell Brand. Again, I was never a fan. I think he's a great voice for sobriety. But when all he was a voice for sobriety, he wasn't a target. I mean, there was mumblings and there were some people, but once this dude chose a side of the aisle, once this dude decided that he was no longer an atheist, I'm telling you 100%, I believe that when you start coming out for a side that you believe is good, then they're going to come at you with all of their barrels blaring. So I am going to watch what happens in the Russell Brand case, and I am not going to make any decisions on whether or not he's guilty or not. I've done that before, and I regretted it. I think Diddy's a scumbag, but he was not guilty of so much of what they accused him of. And the more you read and research, the more you realize that once they get you in their crosshairs, if they can find a woman that says, yeah, I was alone with him in 96, you're in deep trouble. And I used to say this during the Diddy thing. How many times was Diddy alone with somebody? Every one of those people can look at it and go, hoo. If the first 4 women get settlements, I'm probably going to get settlements. And that's how you end up with 18,000 phone calls, right? Allegedly, of people that said that they were, molested by the dude. If Bam Margera can get sober, anybody can. I hope Bam gets and stays sober. I pray for Bam, believe it or not. I have been thinking about Diddy and BG, maybe not BG, but could Diddy request to go to a low custody prison? He could not. He could not. This is considered a sex crime, what he is being convicted of. So that precludes you from being able to go to a low. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell would be the exception to that rule. And I watched Ghislaine Maxwell's entire interview recently, and I'll be honest, there's only a couple of different ways that you can look at it, but she did not throw anyone under the bus. Not Bill Clinton, there was not one person that she said, oh yeah, no, I saw this person with, even Prince Andrew, nobody apparently was ever with any of these women. And I think that I don't buy that, not for a second, because when you read the victims' statements, and they say, no, Ghislaine Maxwell told me exactly how I was to perform oral sex on him because he liked it this particular way. And she participated in threesomes with some of the girls and with Jeffrey Epstein. I don't believe that the woman's hands are that clean, but I think that she's got a tremendous amount of leverage and a tremendous amount of power. Neither side of the government wants the Epstein story told. That's just plain and simple. And you don't have to be a freaking rocket scientist to figure that out. And you don't even have to like me to agree with me on this. Because, yeah, Trump ran on, we're going to tell everybody in the world about Epstein. But prior to him, the Democrats had all that. They had control of everything. They could have just said, all right, here it is, and let it all go out. And if there was a bunch of dirt on Trump in there, they sure as hell would have. They accused him of everything else under the sun. If the Epstein files were going to make Trump look bad, the Dems would have released it. But the Dems didn't. And probably because Bill Clinton was thick in it, right? Really thick in it. And I think both sides of the aisle are filthy in this. And not because they were all going to parties and all going down to the island on the Lolita Express. That's not what I mean. I think that this, if it were to all come out tomorrow, we would realize that there were governments involved in the victimization of these people. Just plain and simple. You know, governments knew exactly what was going on. And it's tough. It really is. But yeah, I'm gonna keep a very open mind on the Russell Brand. Hey, Wharton, I'm gonna keep a very open mind on what's going on with Russell Brand. Because I can't tell you one way or another if the guy's a dirtbag or he's not a dirtbag. I can't. I won't lie to you because of what kind of voice the guy is in the sobriety community. I'm really hoping it's BS. I'd be lying to you if I told you I wasn't. And again, not because I'm a fan. I swear to you, I never saw one movie that dude did that I didn't just think, what a disgusting human. You know, the reboot of Arthur was horrible, and he just comes across as slimy until he didn't. And I get that, you know, and I am a person who's almost my entire life at this point is based on the belief that you can come back from just about any addiction. And I feel like that we saw that with Russell Brand. He went from just being such a slimy, you know, misogynistic kind of jackass that hit on everybody and didn't care where he was doing it, to being a real heartfelt kind of individual that seems like a family man and goes out of his way to try to help people fight one of the most difficult diseases on earth. I heard something about Bill Gates' health. Either he was sick or he's doing a heck of a Howard Hughes impression. Well played. I never saw a picture. I never heard about a picture of Trump in a yellow dress. There's a picture of Clinton in a blue dress that was in the living room of the house. Never heard about anything having to do with Trump being in a painting. And the artist in question only painted, to the best of my knowledge, 2 presidents. And one was George W. Bush, right? Not H.W., but W, the second George Bush Jr. And he was on the ground playing with blocks. It's supposed to be symbolic of 9/11. So as far as Bill Gates goes, here's what I've been able to find out on Bill Gates. Currently, his private jet has a medical suite on it. His house has a complete medical suite. He has doctors that travel with him even when he's in an automobile. And I'll tell you what do you give a guy that has more money than anything in the world? You know, fear of death gets real when you got nothing but money and you're running out of time. When one is wasted on drugs or drugs, consent is sketchy. There's a lot of truth to that. There is truth to that. However, you know, Russell Brand has always maintained that he's been a jackass, but that he never forced anybody to do anything. The problem with that is that, you know, like you say, when someone's getting wasted constantly, what is consent? Does that mean after the 45th time that she said no, she finally went, all right, screw it, you know, go ahead. You know what I mean? The only people that really know, you know, it's like every other case like this, unless you happen to have it on film, right? Or unless the person walked out of that incident, went to a police station, then went to a hospital, right? But even in the Diddy case, when the lawyer from Texas came out for the civil thing and said more than half of these women went to the hospital, what he really meant was We've sent them all to the hospital at some point. Doesn't mean that when it happened, they went to the hospital. It was a lot of smoke and mirrors. So I'm going to keep a very open mind. I'm going to keep an open mind. I think that the way that the guy lived, there's a lot of smoke there. You know, he claimed that, you know, there were times in his life he was sleeping with so many partners daily that it's hard to wrap your brain around the fact that somebody could pull that off. And you start thinking to yourself, you know, maybe he was, you know, maybe he's guilty. What do you think about the Katie Johnson deposition on Donald Trump that is on YouTube? Did you see it? Remind me of which one Katie Johnson is, if you don't mind, because that name right now is escaping me. I have known drug dealers who are lawyers and judges and doctors. I've said this before, and I don't mean every single lawyer on planet Earth. I just mean the ones that I knew and hung out with. Every one of them did blow. I've never met a lawyer personally that didn't do coke occasionally. It's just one of those things. There are consequences that you're going to pay for the things that you've done in your life. And I will tell you something. He's a hell of a voice for sobriety. If he raped these chicks, he should go to prison, right? I mean, that's kind of how it works. However, it gets distressing when we start to look at some of the cases that have been pushed through. I don't like Harvey Weinstein. And I think Harvey Weinstein probably forced a whole lot of women to screw around with him so that they could get parts in films. I don't doubt that for a second. I'd be willing to bet my life on it. However, the hundreds of people who came forward, they couldn't get 3 witnesses. That's disturbing. And the feeding frenzy that takes place during some of these things, once a person is hated enough, then people will call the police and say they're smuggling human beings. Trust me, I know this. People will call the police and say he's smuggling liquid drugs across the Mexican border in his rectum. These things happen to me. They happened to me in the last year. Is that my past catching up to me? Or is that assholes on planet Earth who are taking shots at a content creator because to them it's amusement? It's crazy that drug dealers I've met have been the most respectful. Yeah, you know what? And most drug dealers that I met would be horrified at the possibility that a drug out there would kill somebody. Do you understand what I mean? Like they would do everything within their power to make sure that those kind of things didn't happen. These days, it doesn't seem like that's the case. But I was a pretty big, Anyway, it's, I spent a lot of time around drug dealers, and a lot of them were some of the kindest and most respectful people that I've ever met. Not all of them. Sadly, I think I robbed most of them, even the good ones, because drugs cause desperation in a big way. In high school, I would play golf with my buddy. His dad was a big-time lawyer, had a safe in the office with yayo and cash. Doesn't surprise me. I had a lawyer sit down for my second federal case, the one that involved firearms, and said that if there was a way that I could pay him in drugs, that he'd be willing to take, but it would need to be in the kilo range. That's what the guy said to me. I just went, holy crap, man. I don't think you're going to be my guy. Katie Johnson, I think, was a teenage model. She claimed that at one of Jeffrey Epstein's residence, she had to give Trump a hand job, etc., with gloves on. Here's the thing. Anything, I'm sorry, but if someone is saying it about a president or a leader of either the right or the left, right, I'm taking it with a grain of salt. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. The woman that they brought in to say that Brett Kavanaugh did stuff to her in high school was so full of crap, it's terrifying. She should be incarcerated. But they come out of the woodwork because they believe they're on a mission from God. This person is so evil. They're going to eliminate abortion. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. I will say anything to make this person go away. And Trump is a lightning rod for that kind of hate. Am I saying that it didn't happen? No. But I would definitely want to read all of the evidence. I would want to see that come out in depositions because it's astounding the level of hate that this man and blind faith. The people that love him are just going to go, she's full of crap. It's a setup, right? But we're a very divided United States, right? A very, very divided United States. And it's kind of sad, but it is where we are at. Nice. B Lady said, I lived downstairs from a big time drug dealer who had cars from all of the states. He came downstairs once and told me if anybody bothered me to call him up. Well, you know what? When John Gotti got busted, all of the people from Red Hook and from that part of New York that he lived were heartbroken because there wasn't any crime around where they lived, right? Nobody was going to go in and start doing dirt in that guy's neighborhood, right? He gave out 18 wheelers full of turkeys on the holidays. And I actually knew drug dealers that at Thanksgiving used to give out turkeys in the hood. That was a big deal in a state that I lived in for a lot of years. And I used to think, these are pretty decent human beings until you realize that they paid for all of those by selling crack rocks, right? So the people that you're handing out turkeys to, their 16, 17, and 18-year-old, sons and daughters are in there robbing their grandparents for $10 so they can buy one more rock. It's just, I don't know. Drugs are awful. Okay. And, the question, am I at peace in Ecuador? I am. I absolutely am. And I think that it was a big eye opener for me. I think that if I found myself living back in the United States, I probably could do it again. I probably could achieve happiness even in the US or any place else, because what I've realized is you have to stop the noise that the planet shoves down your throat. And you know what? I was never capable of it. I could preach about it. I could talk about it, but I was never capable of it. And then I moved someplace where that noise isn't there. And the peace that you get when you're not allowing somebody to program you, even by accident, is pretty wild. It allows you to focus on the things that you find important as opposed to the things that MSNBC or Fox News finds important. You know what I mean? I vote by the lesser of two evils principle. Well, you know what sucks about that? This is what really sucks, is that the ideologies of the parties. So if you're somebody that believes that big government is dangerous and that the less a government involves themselves in your life, the better, you're going to vote one direction. If you believe we need more government and the government should control more things, you're going to vote in the other direction. If you believe gun control, right, is something that we really need to lean on and we really need to do something about the guns in this country, you're forced to basically vote in one direction for that particular hot button issue for you. Just like abortion. What they've done is successfully gone and sent us to the corner. And now you're going to vote and go, yeah, I can't stand the politician. But if I vote for the other one, I'm voting for all of the stuff I don't believe in. And that's what's really horrific, is that it just became, that kind of thing. When I was in college, I did so much cocaine, my nose bled and my septum was deviated. No judgment to anyone ever. Yeah, I did a decent amount of blow in college too. B Lady says, Tommy, I don't think it's time for you to move back to the USA yet, for what it's worth. I don't intend to. I do not intend to. Doesn't mean I might not end up back there. People, because of all of the BS that has happened in my life, raising money for this mission that I believe really wholeheartedly on, I'm never going to do on this platform. It's not worth all of the BS that brings into my life. But I'll make you a promise. I'm going to come up with a hell of a lot of money for that center. I am. I'm going to come up with tons of it. The new facility that has just been put up, that's got 8 more people that can have their own beds. I want to see 15 of those units. I want to see 20 of them. So I may end up going around the world to ask people for cash in person. I may go and do things to help fund that, but it won't be online. And to be really honest with you, Ecuador is a fantastic place, but if I were to ever raise money to help the people here, I would probably need to do it in a different place. Spanx is going to be coming and visiting me in the fall. He will be coming down here. Can't wait. Really, really looking forward to it. Archie's mom says, 2 sides of the same coin. Well, there's a lot of truth to that. There really is a lot of truth to that. I wanted the border secure. Anything else would be gravy, but I don't expect it. And you know what? This is one of the most frustrating things in the world to me, because if you look at the statistics on the border, we threw a switch. We threw a switch. And they literally said things like, You know, there's no magic button. You just can't throw a switch and stop what's going on at the border. Turns out you can. Turns out you can really shut the faucet down and make it a lot harder for fentanyl to get across the border. But, you know, hey, as long as you guys can sustain with the online stuff, why would you ever move back to that conversion rate? I would never move back. That would never happen. However, I may end up back there for periods of time to raise some cash for some things that I believe in. We shall see. Tommy, are there politicians there who would help them? There are politicians here that are helping them in their own way. However, Ecuador doesn't have an unlimited supply of money. Neither does the United States. When there is a tragedy in a part of the world and the president comes out and says, we're sending $50 billion to such and such a country, the Constitution gives the president no right to do that. None. But every single president does it. Every one of them. We're just going to send this much money to this country. We're going to send this much money to this country. And Ecuador is not in a position to do that. They're not even in a position to do that yet to their own country. This is a developing country. As opposed to 330 million taxpayers, there are 18 million people living in this country, which means that, you know, with expats, with kids, things like that, you probably got a tax base that's getting generated by a minute number of people compared to the huge amount that they have in the United States. So it's a little bit different. And while there are politicians that definitely want this to, to succeed, their ability to just print more cash is something that we only do in the United States, right? $30 trillion in debt, no big deal. I've got to stay here for when my son gets out of prison. Super afraid because I'll be in my 70s or 80s. Renee B., I have a feeling that by the time your son comes out, there is going to be all kinds of people that are going to be ready to help you support him through the process of re-entering society. What do you think of that? I have faith. I promise you. All righty, folks. So another cult dropped. Do me a favor and leave a comment in the comment section. If this looked like Scientology to you, if it makes you sick, leave me a comment. Because it would really be, I think it would be a cool thing if people reached out and said, hey, what's the difference between, this David Taylor cat and David Miscavige? Because to me, they seem a hell of a lot alike. What is the difference between that particular cult being charged with human trafficking, but the cult of Scientology that does it at an international level? How come it's not for them? Because you sign a contract for 1 billion years, you think that holds up in court? 1 billion-year contract? I am of the firm belief that if the contract you sign is for more than 400 years, it should be null and void. That's just me. That's what I'm saying. All right, folks. Between now and the next time that I run into you, do me a favor and put a little love in your heart. There's not enough of it in this world, I promise you. And if we don't all start treating each other better, then the governments are going to kill all of us, one way or another. I'm not a believer. I'm not a believer in governments much these days. I'm really not. And to see what is being allowed, right, in the name of religion, or what's being allowed in the name of tolerance is enough to make you sick. If you don't see that, maybe Google this, do a little research. All right. I love you people. We'll see you tomorrow. Between now and then, put some love in your heart. I'm Tommy. We'll see you on the next one. God bless.